Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 3 articles in this episode for you, and the URLs are listed in the description of this video for your convenience, in case you want to do any research on them. The first one here is off of SputnikNews.com, and it says, explosion hits nuclear power plant in France, injuries reported. An explosion hit a nuclear power plant in northwestern France. Several people have sustained injuries as a result of the blast. There is no risk of a radioactive release as a result of an explosion at the Flamanville, I think it's called, nuclear power plant. Local media, West France, reported. There have been no serious injuries as a result of the blast. And I love this next part. It says 5 people have been slightly intoxicated. I think they mean injured or maybe confused. My sense of humor wants to say, yes, if I was in there, I'd be intoxicated as well under those circumstances. But hey, I'm just telling you what it says. And it goes on. It says, according to preliminary data, there may be injured people, the newspaper said. The explosion occurred in the engine room of the Flamanville NPP at 10 o'clock local time. Emergency services have arrived at the site. According to the emergency services cited by West France, the explosion took place in the heart of the nuclear power plant outside the nuclear zone. The work of the first reactor of the NPP has been suspended. French officials told Sputnik that short circuit was the reason for the incident. He confirmed earlier reports that several people suffered smoke inhalation. The first thing to note is that there is no risk of emission. It is not radioactive zone. The causes of the incident are being established, but the most likely version is short circuit. The prefecture of the Monchant department told Sputnik. The EDF, the country's largest power generating company and the world's largest operation of nuclear power plants, confirmed the explosion later in the day. There were no victims or environmental damage as a result of the blast. The fire at the NPP was under control. Prefect of La Mancha region, Jacques Witkowski, told France Info news portal that the incident occurred due to a ventilation malfunction which resulted in fire with smoke. In reaction to the incident, Socialist Party, or PS, presidential candidate Benet Hamon expressed solidarity with those who had been poisoned. Thoughts with those hurt and targeted of 50% renewables in 2015. There are no minor nuclear incidents, Hamon posted on his Twitter account. So there you have that article. Man. The next one we have here is off Natural News, and it says the media can no longer hide truth about Fukushima. The entire world is in danger. The first, we first want to thank Fox News for finally reporting on a subject that has been highly censored by the mainstream media for the past 5.5 years. The situation in Fukushima, Japan, is completely out of control. While Fox News recently reported that radiation levels at Fukushima were now at unimaginable levels more than 5 years after the disastrous earthquake and tsunami struck, as Steve Quayle asked in the SQ note he left while linking that story, why has the mainstream media been silent all of this time? We've long believed that the reality has a way of awakening everybody, and the stories recently coming across the wire over at ENE News have been mind-numbing the last few weeks, to say the least. You can hear the Fox News report on Fukushima in the first video below, while the second video, Mike Adams over at Natural News, gives us a new update on Fukushima radiation apocalypse that has been steadily spewing poisons into our atmosphere for almost 6 years now, with hardly a peep from the mainstream media. In the most recent stories from ENE News on February the 5th, they reported the heartbreaking news that a record high number of whale deaths had recently been reported surrounding the Hawaiian Islands, with the sick and starving mammals allegedly a mystery to experts, reporting that rotting carcasses were scattered throughout the islands. How can so-called experts not know that Fukushima poisons flowing into our oceans for years are most likely to blame? As Adams tells us in the video, the sustainability of all life throughout the Northern Hemisphere is in danger, and the entire mainstream media up until now has been a complete blackout mode except for this recent report. Do CNN, MSNBC, and the rest of them think that if they don't report on Fukushima, what's happening to the fish and our oceans is fake news? Do they think that because we can't actually see the radiation, it's not really there? The mainstream media's failure to report upon Fukushima may be the final straw that not only breaks the camel's back, but puts the camel out of our misery. For the past several years, we reported horror story after horror story of sea life dying all across the Pacific Ocean and up and down the entire West Coast, from Alaska to California, all documented and in great detail over the past several years by E&E News, with mass animal deaths all across the world being kept track of by end times prophecy. It's clear that the mainstream media has completely failed the American public on Fukushima. Another recent story over at E&E News reports on Fox News' sudden admission that Fukushima is out of control, highlighting a few phrases used by Fox on the report that shows just how completely out of touch the mainstream media has been with reality over the past 5.5 years. Their story also brings to light. And it says, Fox News, February 8th, 2017, emphasis added, Adam Housley, who reported from the area in 2011 following the catastrophic triple meltdown, said this morning that new fuel leaks have been discovered. He said that critics, including the U.S. military in 2011, have long questioned whether Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, and officials have been providing accurate information on the severity of the radiation. He added that critics are now questioning whether the radiation has been this severe all along. Fox News video transcripts excerpts February 8th of 2017 says experts believe melted fuel is leaking inside the plant almost daily. No one knew in 2011 of the growing threat, which today only continues to get worse. Wow, this is a crazy story. What some people are saying is, has it been this bad since the beginning? Quite surprisingly, after all of their years of silence, the Washington Post actually finally reported on Fukushima on February the 8th in a story in which they asked, could the radiation level be even higher? Possibly. The 530 Siebert reading was recorded some distance from the melted fuel, so in reality it could be 10 times higher than recorded, said Hideyuki Ban, a co-director of Citizens Nuclear Information Center. Imagine that, 10 times higher than the unimaginable levels already detected. Is this why the mainstream media is finally reporting on Fukushima? As a commentator, or try that again, as a commenter on the Washington Post story wisely mentions, we're watching a runaway train speeding completely out of control, and experts have admitted there is really no way to stop it, and at least not in the next several decades. Devastating to our oceans and therefore our food chain. We read in the new SQ alert seen below that most Americans are completely clueless as to what is happening to the Pacific Ocean and up and down the west coast of America. Regarding this forever lied about Fukushima tonnage released daily, the problem is twofold. Number one, only a small yet growing number of dumbed down Facebook and Twitter absorbed McDonald food engorging people are even aware, yes, after 5 years, of how serious Fukushima is. It is because of the mainstream media doesn't breathe a word about it. Number two, the second issue is rampant apathy, resignation, and denial. I sent the bleak and depressing coast of Chile sardine kill photos to friends everywhere, and not even one. We're talking about people your age and mine, about 65, highly successful and intelligent, wrote me back with perhaps a query as to whether it must be radiation from Fukushima or if it might hopefully be El Nino algae, red bloom, choking off oxygen. Only a handful really care. The word I'm looking for is fatalism. David C., my response, SQ denial into destruction. Fatalism usually deals with futility and helplessness to an overwhelming event or disaster. This is the willing abandonment of reason and perception. Nice way of dismissing you and the serious nature of the information you sent them. Their attitude is forget about it. My advice to you, forget about them unless the Lord tells you differently. And the ignorance of the American people in itself is the work of the mainstream media, neglecting to report upon what could be the most important health story in America and the Northern Hemisphere today. A story that up until now has flown completely under the mainstream media radar. So why would the mainstream media black out Fukushima for nearly 6 years, and why are they suddenly reporting upon what's happening there now? In the new story from Mike Adams over the Natural News, he reports, there are times when I'm convinced humanity is a suicidal cult of complete idiots whose only real achievement is figuring out increasingly obscene ways to distract themselves from reality. Adams points out that while most of the nation was fixated on the Super Bowl and Lady Gaga, the Fukushima disaster got much worse, and the mainstream media remained silent. In the news story from Ethan Huff over at the Outbreak News, he reports that according to one liberal college professor, the world will be much better off without 90% of the population. Panaka from the University of Texas claims the Earth is way overdue for a massive die-off, and with much of the left thinking murdering babies is okay, as is expressing their love through violence upon those who don't think like they do. Might Fukushima be the ultimate depopulation weapon, intentionally unleashed upon the West as endless radiological attack upon the Northern Hemisphere, one we cannot see, smell, or taste? The fact that the mainstream media has seemingly gone out of their way to cover up what has been happening at Fukushima for almost 6 years now gives us a hint that something much more might be at play. And the fact that liberal professors such as Eric Panaka seemingly have the death wish for our society should prove to us what kind of people have gained power over the past decade and what have led to snowflakes suffering nuclear meltdowns on U.S. college campuses. Outbreak News says, this is really exciting time. Panaka is quoted as saying amid warnings of an apocalyptic future, death, this is what awaits us all, death. Panaka's collective death wish for humanity fits right into the current eugenics plan of limitless abortion, which has become a rallying cry of the political left. Just recently, millions of women marched on Washington, D.C. to demand that they continue having access to abortion clinics where they can murder their unborn babies on a whim because this is supposedly their right as women. Such evil is exactly the type of thing that Panaka seems to embrace as good in his distorted world view. Killing off humans is a good thing in his demented mind, and this message of human destruction is continually being spread to impressionable young men and women attending college who likely never thought they would encounter this toxic message while trying to get an education. After making his initial statements in front of the diverse crowd at the Texas Academy of Sciences, Panaka was later approached by the Federal Bureau of Investigation after being reported as a potential terrorist. There's a video here where Alex Jones from InfoWars talks with us about Fukushima and the massive mainstream news media blackout and cover-up that's been going on for 5+ years, comparing what's happening at Fukushima to climate change and the global warming, while proving to us mainstream media has an agenda, while asking, what are they still hiding? So if you want to pull that up, there's 3 videos there that you can take a look at in that one. The final article I have in this episode is also off of Natural News, and it's also about Fukushima. It says, cover-up. GE handled Fukushima's nuclear reactor design, knew it was faulty, so flawed it could lead to a devastating accident. Generally referred to as GE, doesn't have the best reputation. The company's history is rife with criminal, civil, ethical, and political offenses, but perhaps one of the most morally questionable aspects of GE centers on an event that happened across the globe, the Fukushima nuclear accident. The corporate giant designed 5 of the 6 nuclear reactors at Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, General Electric Mark I reactors, a design the company knew was faulty decades ago. The potential for disaster was ignored, and the end result was a catastrophic a catastrophe that has unleashed unmeasurable harm on the environment. GE workers resigned over reactor flaws. Just over 40 years ago, Dale G. Breidenbaugh and 2 of his colleagues resigned from their jobs at GE due to their increased concerns about the Mark I nuclear reactor. They were growing more and more convinced that the design was so flawed that it could inevitably lead to a devastating accident. Interview with ABC News, Breidenbaugh explained the problem we identified in 1975 were that in doing the design of the containment, they did not take into account the dynamic loads that could be experienced with the loss of coolant. The impact loads the containment would receive by this very rapid release of energy could tear the contaminant or the containment apart and create an uncontrolled release, he added. Questions about the safety of the Mark I and its ability to handle the immense pressures that would result if cooling power was lost continued to persist for decades. The Mark I has been heavily criticized. In the years after Breidenbaugh came forward, others would go on to speak critically of the Mark I reactor. In 1986, then director of NRC's Office of the Nuclear Reactor Regulation, Harold Denton, spoke out about the concerning design at the industry conference. I don't have the same warm feeling about GE containment that I do about the larger dry containments, Denton said. There is a wide spectrum of ability to cope with severe accidents at GE plants, Denton said. And I urge you to think seriously about the ability to cope with such an event if it occurred at your plant. Global Research also reports that when Denton was asked if the remedial measures performed on Fukushima reactors by GE before 2011 was sufficient, it gave him pause. His response, what I would say is the Mark I is still a little more susceptible to an accident that would result in a loss of containment. It seems that Denton was none too confident in the ability or in the stability of the Mark I reactor either. The New York Times has even reported on the hefty criticisms of GE's creation. The Times noted in 1972, a safety official with the Atomic Energy Commission, Stephen H. Hanauer, recommended that the Mark I system be discontinued because it presented unacceptable safety risks. The smaller containment design was cited as concern because it would be more susceptible to explosion and rupture from a hydrogen buildup, something that is believed to have actually happened at the Fukushima Daiichi plant. Reactors explode in Fukushima. On March 11, 2011, an explosion ripped the roof right off the reactor 1 at Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. On March the 14th, another explosion at reactor 3 injured 11 workers, and another sounded like an explosion was heard near the suppression pool of reactor 2. All 3 incidents were thought to be related to the buildup of hydrogen gas. Scientific American explains that particular meltdown caused the hydrogen explosions. To put it simply, Fukushima was a disaster in every sense of the word. It will take years for scientists to develop the technology to even get near some of the ruins, let alone try and clean up the horrendous aftermath. Even robots cannot be protected against radiation that strong. Following the shocking 9.0 earthquake that rattled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, ABC News reported on March the 15th of 2011 that GE said the reactors had a proven track record of performing reliability and safety more than 40 years, and that they had performed as designed, even among the explosions and evident radiation leaks. Was it all a cover-up? Who knows? But unfortunately for GE, no amount of denial will wash away nuclear radiation. And that's all I have for you in this episode. If you like what I'm doing, give it a thumbs up. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. Subscribe yet? Try that. That way you'll get messages when I do shows and you'll stay informed.